Joining us now is a Republican strategist, former senior advisor to John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign, MSNBC political analyst, and Woody Harrelson lookalike, Steve Schmidt. Steve, thanks for coming on. Happy 420.
Happy 420 to you, John.
Thank you very much. Important day for both of us, I know. Let me ask this question. This morning on Morning Joe, you were insistent, emphatic, like no question in your mind, Donald Trump is going to get to 1237 by the end of the nominating contest. June 8, we were going to wake up. Donald Trump will be the nominee on the first ballot. What gives you that level of confidence that you are just for sure it's going to happen?
I think if you generously apportion a couple of Western state wins to Ted Cruz, you look at the northeastern states, you look ahead to California, 170 plus delegates, winner take all by congressional district, 20-point lead. Very difficult for me to see any scenario where he doesn't clear 1237. And I think the worst he does is he clears it by 60, 70 delegates. I think he'll be right up around 1,300 when we wake up on June the 8th.
That having been said, if you took over the Cruz campaign tomorrow, what would you do?
There's not a lot they can do. Look, they've been trying to narrow this to a two-person race from the beginning, and I think there was one point where the great danger for Donald Trump was that he would be in a position having to fight in a two-way race to his ideological right. But I think that moment is past, and I think the conservative litmus test, such as it is not an ideological one. It's a strength test, and Donald Trump has trumped Ted Cruz on that test. And so Ted Cruz right now, when he's tried to, for so long, make this a two-person race, comes in third place in New York behind John Kasich, somebody that he's called for to get out of the race because he's simply a hindrance. There's no rationale for his candidacy.
What I'd say if I were John Kasich, I'll give you your two-person race, buddy.
Right.
I finished second.
Exactly right. So I think that Ted Cruz, I think that was a really bad night for him last night. You know, and so when you look at Cruz coming into these northeastern states, he's going to lose more momentum next week. He's going to have a real tough time in this part of the country.
So is Mitt Romney right that the fact that this is a three-person race, that Kasich has stayed in, that Cruz has stayed in, that there's been a split in the never Trump world, the anti-Trump vote, is that part of why Donald Trump's going to get to 1237? Is that
I don't. You know, we talk about the never Trump movement. I don't for a practical effect. It doesn't seem to be very potent, to say the least. And I understand that there's hashtags and Never Trump, but there's not an organized effort with any effectiveness, you know, aimed at stopping him. No one's making the argument. I mean, the argument makes no sense. You know, people go out and say, Never Trump. Well, will you support Trump as the Republican nominee? I'm going to support the nominee of my party. Both cannot be true. And it undermines the argument, you know, that no one is saying in public what people say privately about Donald Trump and the Republican establishment and leadership. And I think that speaks to why that movement is so weak.
What are they saying privately?
What they say privately is he's unfit to be president of the United States, and they'll never vote for him. He's unfit psychologically, he's unfit temperamentally, he's unfit ideologically, but no one is making that argument publicly.
You were reluctant to say what you would do to take over the Cruz campaign because you said there wasn't much they could do. If I gave you $100 million and said, stop Trump, what would you spend it on? What message and how would you spend it?
You would try to stop him on temperament issues. You would go back and you would revisit. And look, the most powerful political ad in American history was the Daisy ad in 1964 against LBJ running against Barry Goldwater, using images of the North Korean leader, mushroom clouds, the instability of the world,
and then Trump with
notions of late night tweeting, you know, and you'd make a temperament and character attack, and you'd remind people that the president of the United States is the most powerful person in the world, sits atop the National Command Authority, is commander-in-chief of the most potent military in the world that possesses the weapons to extinguish life on the planet as we know it.
I'm going to ask you a question just today, okay? We woke up this morning, Donald Trump got a lot of praise from a lot of people for his speech last night. Different Donald Trump. And one of the things everyone seized on was a stupid thing, but a small thing. Didn't say Lion Ted Cruz, said Senator Cruz. Different, right? Today, Donald Trump's out in Indiana, calling him Lion Ted Cruz again by the middle of the afternoon. So how do I read that? Is that a sign that the newly imposed discipline is not actually as effective as we thought it was? Is Donald Trump just back to his old tricks? What do we make of that?
I think there's a distinction between the speech you make where a lot of the country's watching in prime time. You've just won an election. It's not a rally setting. You're talking about the next stage of the campaign. You're articulating a vision, why you should be the nominee, why you want to be president of the United States, where you're going to lead. And he started to transition into the general election messaging. You know, Indiana is a contest that he's going to have to compete in, and he's going at Ted Cruz hard. So I think it's set in the light of the day after in a state as we get ready for the next contest. But the difference in tone on an election night when we're weeks away from their steaks and water and everything else up around the podium, I think is significant.
Just wouldn't it worry if you were one of the forces trying to impose a presidential demeanor on Trump from inside the campaign, if you saw him suddenly turn around and be just like back the old, would you not be kind of like, oh my God, he's back again?
I think the issue is not the use of lying Ted. The issue is comportment. Can he comport himself the right way at the right times? Can he show the appropriate dignity required of the American head of state?
Less than 30 seconds. If one of your other old bosses, Dick Cheney, gave a big speech saying Donald Trump should not be our nominee, would that hurt Trump's chances or not?
I think at one moment in time, it would have hurt Trump's chances. I think Dick Cheney is a deeply respected figure inside the conservative movement, inside the Republican Party. But I think it's very, very late in the day for anybody to go out and to make that argument. And look, Mitt Romney is a person inside the Republican Party that has a lot of affection, has a lot of respect. He went out, he gave a speech. I think the effect of that speech, was not particularly injurious to Donald Trump's chances.
Steve Schmidt.